Thank you for that introduction. Recently, we have had two attempts on my part to have introductions to learning about the power of more comprehensive nutrition in the human diet. All the systems of the body are run by the biochemistry that creates the physiology of the processes of life. And it's becoming more and more evident to more people that what we have in our diet and not in our diet is vitally important to how well all our organ systems function. I did one that tried to relate to things that people know and believe without using Latin and Greek terms that are common in science and in medicine. And then I did a second introduction that was a little more technical, because there are those that have had some courses in biology. And I recognize that very few people, if any, that need to know this information are interested in being biochemists or geneticists or molecular biologists, and certainly not a physician. And so we try to make this as simple as possible as I attempt to be your messenger and servant, because I didn't invent or come up with anything new. All of this is ancient knowledge, insight of how the creative and organizing power in the universe has put together space, and also here on our Earth, animal and plant life that is truly incredible. This started out as a middle-of-the-road science and medicine, and it actually turned into a spiritual journey. In 2007, I was invited to come to Las Vegas, and I'm going to use some of the same slides and try to bring this up to date, for a conference on the impact of more comprehensive nutrition on learning and behavior. And of course, the function of the brain, this biocomputer between our ears, gets real rapidly into the biochemistry of memory and cognition, and being able to bring this forward and to utilize it in society, and so, of course, in school. So it also influences the behavior of students. And so now we will proceed with this presentation. Again, the slide is not, there it is. The big question is, why has aloe vera, a desert lily, been used for over 5,000 years to support good health? And in the 1980s, a small company just a few miles from where we're sitting, it was called AvaCare, that some people have known the founder of this, Clinton Howard, came to me because that company had 12 aloe vera products. One of them was a beverage called Carolo, and at the height of the panic over the AIDS epidemic, he received faxes and mail. There weren't any emails in those days, from 7 different individuals that had the AIDS syndrome. And they basically told him that I was waiting on my bed to die from this disease of unknown cause with no treatment. And I drank your aloe juice, and I thought you'd like to know that I'm back at work or in school, have no or minimal symptoms. And when he found us out, he just went ballistic and founded a new company called Carrington Laboratories, raised $20 million to investigate aloe leaf gel to try to find out what was in the leaf gel that was producing the benefits for this AIDS that was eventually found to be a virus. Research was done by 12 institutions for research and academic studies, and they found out that the active ingredient in the aloe leaf gel was acetylated mannose. At that time, it was thought that was the principal, if not the only, material in the leaf, but the sensitivity of the instruments were such that the mannose sugar or monosaccharide that had to be acetylated was 40 to 50% of what was in the leaf gel. With more sophisticated sensitive instruments, we now know that there are about 10 different monosaccharides or sugars in the aloe leaf gel, but that the principal one that supports the body's host defenses against any infection is the acetylated mannose. It's also called acemannan. Well, this has been used for since the dawn of civilization. It's known that Alexander the Great, in his war train, had big plants of aloe in containers that they used them primarily for topical wounds of his soldiers. So this has been around for a long time. Now, this is an example of the molecule that the academic researchers found out. As I say, it's about 40 to 50% mannose in the gel, and it has to be acetylated. And now it's known that there are about 10 in there, but all the other sugars are less percentage, whereas the principal sugar is acetylated mannose or acemannan. Now, I mentioned that every cell has a assembly line in it, and under electron microscopy, it can be confusing, but I give you a cartoon here. And to the left, you see an idealized cell, and it has a nucleus in it, you can see. And what we see here, about what you can see on 1,000 magnification with light microscopy, I think you can see my pointer pointing out where we are. And the nucleus is much like the reference library for the information for life. And the DNA does not come out of that, but a copy is made, just like when you go to the library. You can't take the reference books out, but you can make a copy, and RNA is a complementary copy, and it goes out into the cell that under 1,000 magnification, it looks like it's just an empty space in the cytoplasm around the nucleus. However, by electron microscopy, which gets up to about 100,000 magnification, there are 3 major assembly line steps. The first one is called the ribosome, and you don't have to remember what this is, but this is where primarily under the control of the genes that the amino acids are hooked together for the proteins or peptides. The second step is called endoplasmic reticulum, or ER, and that's very important for what we're going to share with you in just a minute. The third step is called the Golgi kind of finishing station. And I previously pointed out that close to where I'm sitting is a General Motors assembly plant, and they bring in parts by truck and rail car, and they hook them all together under a plan. And if everything is together, the vehicles look right and will function. Well, this assembly line assembles the nutrient molecules to make all the structure, like the membranes and the cells and the organs, and cells that are white cells that function and move around in the body. So all these products of life in the body are made. But in the middle is the biochemistry, and this is a very important paper that was published in 1985. It had over 300 citations of research that had been done in the previous 20 or 25 years. It was a review paper by the Cornfields from Washington University at St. Louis. And the biochemistry was such that when I found this one night in the library, for about 2 or 3 days, I could hardly sleep. I was so excited because the mannose that we had found that was the active ingredient in the aloe, in the endoplasmic reticulum, in the cellular synthesis, 9 molecules of the mannose in 3 chains are put together and hooked to an amino acid chain to make a domain. You see this, it looks like a little pitchfork, and it's all over the surface of every cell in the body. And this domain is for cell-to-cell instructions. And this leads to harmony among all the cells of the body. There are trillions of cells, and they got to work together. It's very important. And that's one of the reasons this molecule is so powerful and has been used for eons in informal folk medicine to support health benefits. Before I leave this, I was in Colorado, Denver, and there were 200-300 people in the auditorium. And in the second row at the end, there was an individual dressed in black, looked like he had a baseball cap on backwards, which I noticed him. But I found out eventually when I got through my lecture, he asked this slide to be put back up. And he introduced himself that was not a baseball cap, but it was a yarmulke. And he was a Jewish rabbi. And he said, put that slide back up again. He said, now, are you telling me that this structure is on the surface of every cell in my body? And I said, yes, that's not questionable. It's well-established research. He says, do you realize this is the symbol of the shin? And I kind of reached down toward my knee and I says, the shin? And he says, no. Says in the Hebrew scriptures, the name of Yahweh is so holy, we don't pronounce it. We just have the symbol there. And he says, did you come here today to tell me that my creator has put his signature on the surface of every cell in my body? And I says, heavens no, I never heard of this before in my life, but yes, this structure is on the surface of all your cells. He was so excited. I don't think I ever had anyone leave a lecture more elated. He just seemed to float out of the auditorium on the thought that the creative power of the universe had put its signature on every cell in its body. Now, there is a sequence of events. As I told you, there were 7 AIDS patients. And one of the things was that these various institutions that were being paid to do contract labor research found out not only was the retrovirus of AIDS inactivated and prevented infections, it stopped infections cold if they were already infected, and in special cell cultures were able to show that the viral proteins are rapidly removed from the cells. But they went on and found out that every virus in animals and plants that could be tested, that it was effective against all viruses. That was startling. And the next thing we found out is that in Texas Tech School of Medicine and at the Fisher Institute, that a panel of bacteria that are pathogenic, that all of them were prevented or the infection stopped. And eventually these academic institutions found out that biochemically, this acemanid from the aloe plant boosts the body's host defense against any type of infection, not only viruses, but bacteria, fungus, and ultimately in orphanages in Africa, it was reported that even malaria organisms, chronic malaria in children, that they quit having fever, chills, and red cell destruction. I didn't know it before this happened, that the number one cause of death of children on planet Earth is chronic malaria. Well, these children got out of bed, began to grow, went back to school, and ultimately found out that they excelled in athletics. We thought for at least 2 years we had the most incredible boost for stopping or preventing infections, that this was a stimulator of the body's host defenses against all infections. And with this knowledge, one of the lab technicians in the hospital where I worked came to me and said that he had this, I think she was about a 10 or 12-year-old daughter, that had serial middle ear infections, sinus infections, bronchitis, just always having something wrong in terms of infection. And he wanted to try this. And sure enough, in a few weeks, he said, all the infection in her is gone. But then in about 6 or 8 months, he came back. And this is important for today's lecture. He said, what I didn't tell you is that my daughter had been in special education and other various schools. And finally, we had to put her in a private school because she had learning difficulties. And since we started her taking this each day with her meals, this active ingredient from the aloe plant, she has started, her behavior's improved, her ability to learn is improved, and she's back in regular classes. So I said to her, honey, what has changed? And she said to me, well, Dad, you know, when mother hollers at you and you've got the television controller and you're going from channel to channel trying to find what you want, she screams at you and says, get on one channel and stay there. She says, before I took this aloe ingredient, it was like inside my head that constantly anything I was thinking about would just change, just like different channels on the TV set. But says now I can focus in on one channel and stay there, and memory and learning and everything in school is going better. That was the first hint we had that this was doing something incredibly important in regard to improving brain function. Now, we had multiple children that were autistic from different places, and the parents would contact me from various states, telling about how improved the children were that had autistic problems. And I won't go into the different stories that mothers told me, but I began to inside my head say, gee, this could be important for these autistic children to start developing more normal. Well, eventually, and I'll show you details of it later, a little school in Chicago, Illinois, that was in Cabrini Green public housing project, which was the biggest federal housing project for welfare population, and big problems with minorities there. It was a little church there that had an academy of about 60 children that had fallen through all the cracks of the school system of the state. And they were in this, what was described as a little school of bedlam. And they had marked improvement of these children. And many of them got off of Ritalin and Alderel and different drugs that they were doing. And this began to add to it. Then in Massachusetts, there was a counselor with an autistic son that improved so much that she published a paper. She contacted about 40 or 50 families with an autistic child, and 21 of them responded. And she published how all these children had improved with their ability to focus and to function socially and academically. Then we had children with Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21. We had children with cerebral palsy that they said would never be able to go to school, improve. And then ultimately in Canada, I was asked to come up because they had 7 fetal alcohol syndrome children that had been taken away from their mothers that were alcoholics. And they were in special education and making no progress and were behavior problems. Then for some reason, all 7 of them started behaving real well in school and at home. And then they started to learn. And they wanted me to come to Canada and to explain to them how in the world this is possible, because the government had done the IQ testing when they first entered the school, and they were all less than 50. That is terrible damage from breakdown products of alcohol, damage to the brain cells. However, when they tested them again, they found out that their IQs ranged from 80 to over 100, these same children that had been less than 50. And this caused a intellectual challenge to us. How in the world is this possible? I showed you the 9 molecules and 3 chains and then the plasma reticulum, but this increase in the IQs of these children and their academic performance couldn't be explained by that. And so I have written a syllabus, and at the end I'll give you how to contact me by email, and I can send you by email the syllabus that I wrote, that we were able to demonstrate that the active ingredient from the aloe generates millions of adult stem cells, and they can migrate into the brain and replace neurons that have been damaged by toxic products from alcohol or any degenerative process. In addition to this, in Arkansas, at the medical school, there was a psychiatrist and her faculty husband that did some formal studies in ADD and ADHD children, as well as compulsive disorders, and I'll share some of that with you. And I had previously talked about the Chicago Results Project in the Israel Christian Academy. And at this point, I will go on to the next slide. Now, in previous presentations, I have tried to emphasize that recognizing the power of nutrition to support the biochemistry of life, even when before they even knew biochemistry, they were seeing empiric benefits. Well, this was a study that was published in the journal Pediatrics in 1998, and it's from New Zealand. And you can imagine that way down in New Zealand, they got a lot of time on their hands. And this paper is on breastfeeding and later cognitive and academic outcomes. And you see the authors there, Howard and Ferguson. And the graph shows from 0 to 16 years on the horizontal period that they followed these children in New Zealand, 1,025 children. And then on the vertical axis was a composite of IQ testing, standard tests that they gave to them, and teachers' evaluation, and ended up their high school performance at 18 years. And the statistic on this, as you can see there, was very important. But what they compared were 4 groups of children, those that were bottle fed, which is the bottle bottom, and you can notice for all the years that their academic performance was the poorest. And then if they nursed from their mother for up to 4 months, they had better IQ and standard testing and school performance in 4 to 7 months, and then finally 8 months. And that was always at the highest. Well, this tells you that there's something very important in mother's milk. And this is from a paper in Scientific American in 1997. And it says breastfeeding stimulates the infant immune system. However, this shows that each of these symbols are different sugars that are present in mother's milk, but are also present in aloe leaf gel. And it doesn't have mannose there because assaying for mannose is a story in itself and was difficult. And I wrote the authors and told them how to find out how to assay for mannose, and that they should find out from other papers in the literature that mannose that is present in aloe vera leaf gel is also present in mother's breast milk. And you can very quickly say, in the organization and designing of life, would you put in mother's milk nutrients that would be optimal for the development of this child? And of course, the answer is yes. Now, does this make any difference? And here's another paper from the literature. And the first chart is the thymus index. And the thymus is a tissue that's beneath the breastbone in children when they're born. And by about 5 to 6 years ago, it goes away. And this is the source of the T lymphocytes in the host protection system of the body. And if you'll notice that the average of children that are breastfed is from very high and then average, but the average is this bar for breastfeeding is right here. Now, partial breastfeeding, like we saw in the years on the New Zealand study, is not as high as total breastfeeding, but it's increased. And here is commercial formula that you buy in the store or the drugstore in terms of the shadow and the size of the mass of tissues, because these cells, the thymic cells, go out and seed in the lymph nodes and in the bone marrow for the rest of the life. It gives you how robust host defense is in the body's defense against all types of infections. Another example of how important this is that young children have skin problems. It's oftentimes not recognized that the skin is the biggest, the dermis and epidermis is the biggest mass of tissue in the human body. In these babies, it's the biggest mass of tissue. And this is the incidence of eczema in the children. It goes from 0 to 50% of the children. And then this is the type of milk that the babies are getting, either from the breast, which is the red, and this is a Good Start formula, which is very good. And then here's Enfamil and Similac, much higher incidence of eczema in these children as they age from 6 to 60 months. Now, another function in children, which is a real problem, is asthma. And this is, again, the instance of asthma, which runs up to 50%. But the lowest incidence of asthma is in breastfed children. And this Good Start, again, the content is very good. not quite as good as breast milk, but good. And then these other two common formulas, a much higher incidence of asthma. So this is getting across that not only what I'm going to show you about the brain functions better, but host defense of the body is greatly increased by more comprehensive nutrition. Now, with my wife, who was the editor, for a year, over a year, we presented a journal periodically called Proceedings of the Fisher Institute. And I particularly have one that I'll show you details later. It's the Chicago Results Project, the influence of dietary supplementation on children's grades and behavior. But the importance of this is what I've been telling people, that if you are ordering the current formulation we call New Eden, which replaces nutrient molecules that are lower absent in the modern food chain, if you tell us what your deviation from normal health is and how you're trying to get back to normal, we may have a publication of a case series or a pilot study or a more formal study that has been published. And if you tell us there's a place on the web for comments what your problem is, we will send you at no cost a copy of this journal that addresses your problem if we know what it is. Now, this is the original Fisher Proceedings of November '97, and we have many copies of this, and I've asked them to any order we receive to send this because it introduces people to the potential significance of glyconutritionals. And glyco is from the Greek, meaning sugar nutritionals, like mannose is a sugar or monosaccharide, and understanding the benefits of antioxidants. And of course, knowledge is very powerful. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but what you think and believe is extremely powerful and can be very negative or very positive. So what I'm trying to do is to give you new knowledge that you can improve your diet and get better function of your body by more comprehensive nutrition. Now, this is an issue of proceedings, and the two doctors, well, one of them is a psychiatrist from Arkansas, and this dentist did a paper on attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome, in other words, ADHD. And I will have a bigger presentation of this. This is made up of 17 children, ages 5 to 15, 8 males, 7 females. They were observed for an 8-week period. And here were parent ratings for their score of inattention that the parents could detect, and their mind just wandering around, never on the same subject. Remember the little girl telling her father that her mind was like kind of like him surfing with the television controller, and she couldn't stay on the same channel. Well, this was a degree of improvement in parents in regard to their observation of their 17 children. And then this is the impulsivity. They can't stay focused. They're all over the place with activity, and it improved even more in terms of the parents' rating. And this is something that's very significant, is that all their health problems were improved during this period of time, not just their inattention and their hyperactivity and impulsivity by the psychiatrist and a dentist working with it. In addition, this journal, Integrative Physiology and Behavioral Science, was published out of a group in the University of Arkansas School of Medicine and Children's Hospital. And this paper was published in this journal. And this is another paper that was in this journal of children, 17 of them, on their inactivity, hyperactivity, impulsive, oppositional, and compulsive disorders. And you can see that their inattention, their hyperactivity, their oppositional disorder, and their compulsive disorders all improve as you improve nutrition, because the biochemistry and physiology of the brain functions better when you have better nutrition. Now, this is teachers' rating in the classroom of these students. And again, the teachers rate the inactivity, the hyperactivity, the oppositional disorder, and compulsive disorder, much like the parents. And this is the parent evaluation over time of health complaints and drug side effects, because nearly all these children were on different drugs for these problems, and their health complaints in general decreased, as well as the side effects of their drugs. This is a very important paper that was published in the Fisher proceedings that I mentioned to you before. A psychiatrist in Colorado and a psychologist and staff had a group of bipolar disorder children that were on drugs, and they left them on the drugs. But this is in this paper an important thing, that they have a lot of side effects from the interference and toxicity of psychotropic drugs. And this rates on their side effect profile how bad it was when they started this study, and at 24 weeks, how it's improved. This has been repeated over and over again in different patients, adult as well as children, that more comprehensive nutrition supports the body's liver, the kidney, and the tissues to neutralize and get rid of drug effects, because drugs are organic molecules that are designed to interfere with the biochemistry and physiology of the body to reduce symptoms so long as you take the drug. An ideal drug, you'll find out from the pharmacologists, is that the symptoms come back if you stop taking the drugs. That's a good business effect. But drugs suppress, substitute for, stimulate the normal biochemistry of the body, whereas nutrition supports and is utilized in cellular synthesis to try to move the environment inside the body and all the organs to the normal zone. We don't treat, cure, or mitigate disease, syndromes, or abnormal health conditions. All we do is, through nutrition, is support the normal biochemistry and physiology. And this gives you a pattern here of how the toxicity of the drugs is reduced by giving it to the children. Now, this is one of the key issues of the proceedings of the Fisher Institute. And I won't give you a long story about how this came about for this little church school to do this, because a distributor in Manatech Incorporated went to more than 20 state schools that had special education And he was literally thrown out as he tried to get them to test this with their problem children in special education. And this little church in Cabrini Green heard about his efforts and came to him and says, we would like to try this because we have all these kids that have fallen through all the cracks and it's a real problem. Now, we're going to, this is one of the pages in it, and learning environment improvements. This is before the improved nutrition, and this was after. And the children were in different groups. They were a total of 58, but those that were getting grades were 41. And what this actually shows is these group of students that their grade point average increased an average of 1 point in 1 6 weeks period by more comprehensive nutrition. That may not sound like much, but Scientific American had a major study written by 4 PhD teacher school individuals that pointed out that in Kentucky, millions of dollars were spent on what the agenda was to improve nutrition, which costs a lot of money. And after spending several million, they could not show any benefit for improved academics or behavior. Wisconsin saw this study and said, oh, they didn't do it right. So they increased the amount of money and the time, and they told their legislature, see, we got a little bit of benefit. Well, it was such a small amount that there were smart people, elected officials, saying, let's get an outside evaluating firm to come in. And they did, and they said there was no benefit. Well, according to this paper, then in California, they saw the results of what the education theory said needs to be done and will produce benefits. They said they didn't do it right. We will allocate $1 billion in 10 years to reduce class size from an average of 22, 23 to 17, more time on task, special training of the teachers. And in this paper, they said at 5 years and at $500 million in expense doing this, they could show no benefit. Well, for more comprehensive nutrition to produce this benefit in the children that were getting grades in this group, 41 of them, becomes more significant when you put it up against what has been tried with huge amounts of expense. Now, I showed you first that I can see it better, that the conflicts in the school had been as high, and their intolerable would be 100%. The teachers said it's about 70% more of conflicts daily, and it was reduced to 34. School noise went from 88% to 56%. Disruption of the classes by the students with their inactivity and their spontaneous activity went from 75% to 36%. And we sent a retired airline pilot to do an on-site examination of the school. And he said at this point, when they first started this, all the teachers there were looking for other jobs because the environment was so negative in the school with students and their parents, and they were seeing no benefit. And they wanted to find a place where they could see benefit from their activities. After more comprehensive nutrition was added to the study, all of the teachers were excited about what was happening in the school, and they wanted to stay there to see what the next great thing was happening. The very first thing happened in this little Israel academy is that I want to share with you is that periodically, just like all schools, they have parents' night. Well, in Cabrini Green, because of the lack of education and no computers and multi-generational welfare, they would have parents' night and no parent would show up whatsoever for the students. After 6 weeks of more comprehensive nutrition, they had parents' night, and every student had a parent show up. They showed up and they basically said, "What are you doing up here? What's going on?" My boss, the son or daughter comes home, they get out their books, and we don't even have to tell them. They do their homework on their own volition. They don't fight with the next door neighbor kids. They don't fight with their older brothers and sisters or younger sisters. We tell them to do something and they do it. We ask them to quit doing something and they quit doing it. This is not my typical child. What in the world are you doing up here? Well, it's apparent that brain function is improved, not only for behavior and motivation and activity, but the child can, as I frequently say, if they are causing problems with their parents or the teachers, they get cold pricklies and a bad day, so to speak. But if you do what your teachers and your parents want you to do, you get warm fuzzies. And this assessment can be made by the child because nearly all of us want a better day than a bad day. And when the brain is working better, you realize that actions have consequences. And if you work to get along with your adult supervision, you're going to have a better day. Well, here are for the teachers rating in the Little Israel Academy, and you can see the before and after. The ability to grasp facts went from a rating of the teachers from 30 to 80. Classroom participation from 52 to 71%. Teacher-student cooperation improved. Student-to-student harmony improved. Homework being done improved. Attention in class went up. And the learning environment was greatly, of all of this, improved before supplementation. And of course, the grade point averages increased, which I gave you before. This was the daily supplementation with micronutrients for academic performance. They went from an average grade of 2.98 to 3.63. That's why that 1 point was so significant. Teachers' evaluation of what's going on in the school was increased as I told you, they were wanting to leave the school. Now they wanted to stay and see what's going to happen. Now, this is the evaluation form that we had for each student that each teacher had. And when I got these, one of them brought me to tears because on the back of them was blank. And the teachers wrote little anecdotal reports of what happened in the classroom. And the one that hit me so heavily was this. She said, Elmo came in from recess, and he had these glasses on. And says, I yelled at him and says, "What are you doing with Elmira's glasses? Put them on her desk." And he started to try to protest. And I said, "You shut out your mouth. Don't backtalk me. You put those glasses on that desk." In a few minutes, Elmira comes in. She's got a pair of glasses on, just like the pair that had been put on the desk by Elmo. The teacher turns to Elmo and says, "Elmo, whose glasses are those you were wearing?" He says, "I tried to tell you, they're mine." She said, "You've been in this school 2 years and you never worn glasses." He says, "Why should I wear glasses? I can't read." She said to him, "Well, why are you wearing glasses today?" He says, "I want to learn to read." Now, you talk about the human condition. You can't do anything with children, adults, or anyone that's got a problem unless they want to respond and have some vision of something can be better, or that you have something that they want and need. And that was an incredible event in my life, because in the early 80s, I was on the Texas State Board of Education and knew about the problems across the entire state. And this is not only the problem among children in schools, this is a problem in society. Until people can say essentially, "I want," and have a vision of something better, you can't do anything to help them. Now, in the Chicago benefits, the 100% attendance on Parents Night I told you about, there were positive feedbacks from the homes. The teachers that were considering quitting did not. 12 had no need for psychotropic drugs out of the 41 in 6 weeks. Student insights and life goals were elevated. Academic performance, attitudes, habits, and doing homework improved. And I want to share with you, a few months after this, the Dietary Supplement Company had a major meeting in Chicago where the Israel Academy was present. 2 teachers and 4 little girls came to the meeting and had the stage at one point, and they basically were saying, "Thank you for making this available to our school and the benefits." And I particularly think of one little 12-year-old girl that looked like and acted like a pint-sized television personality that you're all familiar with, Oprah. And she spoke and moved with such a countenance that it really impacted the group. And she started out by saying that where we live, when we go to school and go home, nearly every day we hear gunshots. She said, in our community, the only people that have anything are either selling drugs or prostituting. And there was kind of a hush of the audience. And she says, but now with what we've been through with more these bears, candy bears that have the nutrients in them, she says, I'm going to get my GED and I'm going to go to college and I'm going to major in journalism. Well, I have on my computer a video of this little girl now that's in her 20s. She did get her GED. She did go to college and major in journalism. She became a video journalist, and she is doing incredibly well. And one of the other little girls, they inform me, has not only done this, but is trying to get her grades to go to medical school. This is children at risk. And I neglected to tell you that in education theory, that because of the environment, being a minority student, that experts project that by the time they're 20, they will either be dead, they will be in prison, or they will be selling drugs or doing prostitution. More comprehensive nutrition to these groups of at-risk students did incredible, robust benefits. And I am still trying to find out more information about maybe other children and what their benefits were. But just the 2 that I told you about, it was certainly worth the effort about the impact it had on their lives. Now, I give you this slide to point out that at Texas A&M School of Veterinary Medicine, they have a very special microscope for cells and culture, and they took liver cells and they could test for the level of glutathione in the cells. Now, glutathione is a very special molecule that is made by cellular synthesis on the assembly line that I've shown you before. 3 amino acids are hooked together to make this cell, which try to explain to you the importance of glutathione. As human beings, we have cycles we go through at least every day. We spend part of the 24 hours asleep. We wake up, we have meal times. We go to the bathroom at times and pass urine and feces. We are productive certain hours. So we have a cycle each day that we go through. Well, cells have cycles. And in the S1 phase cycle of the cells, I call it good housekeeping, because the genes are turned on to try to make the environment in the cell balanced into the level of sodium, potassium, hormones, amount of water, electrolytes. And glutathione is a molecule that, like a sponge, soaks up and deneutralizes toxic molecules and free oxygen molecules and free radicals. It neutralizes them and balances the oxidative stress level inside the cell. So it's a very important molecule. It actually does 60% of this good housekeeping phase in the cell, along with superoxide dismutase and catalase, which are a big part of the additional 30%. These molecules that kind of like magnets, if you will, that take toxic molecules and grab them and hold them and then activate them. Well, what you have there in A in this glutathione thing is the level of glutathione in the cells just on normal nutrition that's provided to the tissue cultures for the livers. When you add the active ingredient from the aloe, acemannan, this increases. So this increases the capacity of the cell to balance all the constituent molecules in it. Now, it doesn't show here, but they took the A and they put a organic oxidizer, which virtually wiped out this capacity of glutathione in the cell. However, with this increase by adding the platulin, which is an organic oxidizer, more than 50% of this neutralizing capacity still was present. And this is very healthy because this is the disease process is associated with increased oxidative stress within the body. And it's alphabetized, and you can look down through it and all. One of the things I would like to point out is diabetes mellitus, particularly out of control, which is virtually an epidemic in our society, has oxidative stress. Not an uncommon thing is inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Here's Parkinson's, and here's Alzheimer's, and rheumatoid arthritis. And you can see that autoimmune diseases are common in here. So this effect of the acemannan to increase the glutathione in the cells also does this in brain cells. And this is why with better balance, you can have memory and recall and cognition and evaluate things better because your cells aren't sick. The environment is more producive. I would like to end again with here in Texas, at the University of Texas for over 40 years, was a PhD, Roger J. Williams, that wrote 12 books on nutrition. And his history is very interesting about how he became a PhD in the middle of the Depression. And the only way he could get a job is at Fleischmann's yeast factory. And he found out that the yeast produced different flavors and different substances based on the food that was made available to the yeast to metabolize. And from this, he leaped to the knowledge that nutrition is very important to cells. And in his 12 books, the most important one, and I have copies of it, Nutrition Against Disease, 1971, in the first chapter, where he explores why medicine and science has repeatedly ignored or didn't recognize the value of nutrition. And he states that my 40 some odd years, that everything that I have written can be summarized in one sentence. And that is, the human body heals itself and nutrition provides resources to accomplish the task. I never knew Dr. Williams. He died at 94, years before I got started in the 1980s. And what was thought to be a drug pursuit turned into recognizing the value of nutrition in the body and the power of how nutrition supports the normal biochemistry and the normal physiology of the body. I could only add to this that every human function of all the organs, including the brain, which is responsible for education and learning in its function, is made more robust by nutrition that provides the molecules required to make the bioactive compounds to accomplish the task of more effective education. With that, I'd like to end this program. And thank you for listening. And I hope this is a benefit and that your child or grandchild will do better in school with more comprehensive nutrition.